The stars had never looked so threatening to Admiral Kim Tae-ho as he stood on the observation deck of Luna Station. For 18 months, his team had been watching the Valerian Empire's massive fleet crawl through space toward Earth. 12,000 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. The aliens thought they were being clever, staying just outside the range of what they believed were Earth's primitive sensors. They were wrong about many things. Dr. Park Ji-woo walked up beside him, holding a data pad that glowed softly in the dim light. She had been working for 3 days straight, surviving on coffee and determination. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of sleepless nights spent analyzing alien technology and fleet movements. The quantum arrays in the asteroid belt picked up more transmissions, she said quietly. They're still talking like this will be easy. They think we're just another primitive world that got lucky with basic space travel. Kim Tae-ho smiled grimly. Let them think that. Humanity had learned long ago that being underestimated was often the greatest advantage of all. While other species in the galaxy built bigger ships and louder weapons, humans had focused on being clever, being patient, being invisible until the moment came to strike. What's their estimated arrival time? He asked. 6 days until they reach Neptune's orbit, 2 weeks until they're at Mars, 3 weeks until they're knocking on our front door. Park Ji-woo's voice was steady, but Kim could hear the tension underneath. Everyone was feeling it now. The waiting was almost over. Across the solar system, Captain Lee Bo-ra was making final checks on her stealth frigate Silent Storm. The ship looked nothing like the massive alien vessels bearing down on them. It was small, sleek, and covered in materials that bent light around it like water flowing over a stone. 23 other ships just like it were scattered throughout the outer system, invisible to alien sensors and waiting for orders. Bo-ra ran her hand along the ship's hull. Every bolt, every wire, every system had been designed with one purpose in mind. The Valerians would never see them coming. Her crew of 12 was handpicked from Earth's best pilots and engineers. They had trained for this moment for 5 years, running silent missions through the asteroid belt and practicing attack patterns against mock targets. Captain, her communications officer called out. We're receiving the preliminary activation signal from command. Bo-ra nodded. Protocol Lazarus was beginning. The name came from an old Earth story about someone who came back from the dead. It was fitting. The Valerians thought they were coming to destroy a helpless world. Instead, they were about to discover that Earth had been playing dead for a very long time. Back on Luna Station, General Choi Dae-won was reviewing the final details of humanity's defense plan. The old soldier had fought in 3 different wars on Earth before taking command of the planet's unified military forces. He understood that sometimes the best way to win a fight was to let your enemy think they had already won. The mining platforms are all in position, reported Commander Yoon Hee-jin from her command center hidden deep inside what appeared to be a normal asteroid. The Valerians have been watching our mining operations for months. They think we're just digging up rocks and ice. Choi Dae-won chuckled. If only they knew what humanity had really been mining. Not just metals and water, but strategic positions. Every asteroid, every piece of space debris, every seemingly innocent cargo ship was part of a web that stretched across billions of kilometers. The Valerians were flying into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. The alien fleet commander, Admiral Krextar, stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the holographic display showing the Sol system. His 4 eyes gleamed with anticipation. This would be his 848th conquered system and probably the easiest. The humans had barely reached their own moon when his empire first noticed them. Now they had a few small stations and some basic mining operations, but nothing that could threaten a proper military force. Admiral, his sensor officer reported, we're detecting increased radio chatter from the human colonies. It appears they've noticed our approach. Krextar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Of course they had noticed. The Valerian fleet was hardly trying to hide. 12,000 ships created quite a signature, even across interstellar distances. He wondered what the primitive humans were thinking right now. Panic, probably. Maybe they were trying to build defenses or calling for help from neighbors who couldn't possibly arrive in time. Let them chatter, he said. Soon they'll learn what happens when a world defies the Valerian Empire. But on Earth, the chatter was not panic. In command centers hidden beneath mountains and on stations disguised as research facilities, humanity's military leaders were having very different conversations. Solar collectors are at full charge, reported engineer Nam So-young from Mars orbit. Her communication arrays had been gathering energy from the sun for years, storing it in massive capacitor banks that the aliens assumed were just part of normal space station operations. Missile platforms report ready status, came another voice from the outer system. The cargo ships that had been making regular runs between planets were loaded with something very different from the consumer goods their manifests claimed. Ghost Squadron is in position and standing by, added Pilot Han, Wubin from somewhere in the darkness between worlds. His fighters were so small and so quiet that they might as well have been invisible. Admiral Kim Tae-ho listened to the reports and felt a cold satisfaction settle in his chest. The Valerians had made the classic mistake of thinking that bigger always meant better. They had built a massive fleet designed to intimidate and overwhelm primitive defenses. But humanity hadn't built primitive defenses. They had built something much more dangerous. They had built a trap. "All stations, this is command," Kim said into his communicator. "Protocol Lazarus is now active. Welcome to the Sol Defense Grid. Let's show our guests what human hospitality really looks like." Across the solar system, systems that had been masquerading as civilian infrastructure began to reveal their true nature. The war for Earth was about to begin, and the Valerians had no idea what they were flying into. Admiral Krekstar's confidence began to crack when his fleet crossed Neptune's orbit and the asteroids started shooting back what had appeared on long-range sensors as normal space rocks suddenly blazed to life with weapon signatures that made his tactical officer's scales change color with alarm. Massive railguns emerged from what he had assumed were mining excavations. Missile ports opened in the sides of asteroids that had been tracked as simple debris for months. Energy readings spiked across the electromagnetic spectrum as hidden power cores came online. "Admiral," his sensor operator called out, voice tight with disbelief. "I'm reading over 300 distinct weapon platforms in this sector alone. They've been here the entire time." Commander Yoon Hee-jin watched the chaos unfold from her command center buried deep inside asteroid 2847 Delta. For 2 years, her teams had been hollowing out space rocks and filling them with enough firepower to level a small moon. The Valerians had been watching human mining operations and seeing exactly what they expected to see. Humans digging holes, moving equipment, processing raw materials. They had never imagined that the holes were weapon emplacements and the raw materials were being turned into ammunition. "Target the lead dreadnoughts," she ordered calmly. "Let's give them something to think about." The asteroid belt erupted in synchronized violence. Railgun projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed slammed into Valerian shields with devastating effect. These weren't the crude kinetic weapons the aliens expected from a primitive species. These were precisely engineered tungsten penetrators designed to punch through energy barriers and tear apart hull plating. Tech specialist Kang Min-ho had spent 3 years perfecting the deception. Every mining platform, every cargo hauler, every maintenance drone had been designed with dual purposes. The Valerians saw industrial equipment. What they got was a distributed weapons network that turned the entire asteroid belt into a killing field. "Platform 7 reports successful hit on alien cruiser," he announced. "Target is venting atmosphere and falling out of formation. Platform 12 has eliminated a destroyer with a direct railgun strike. Platforms 15 through 20 are engaging the enemy vanguard with concentrated fire," the reports kept coming. Across millions of kilometers of space, humanity's hidden fortresses were systematically tearing apart ships that outweighed them by factors of 10 or more. The Valerians had numbers, but humans had position, preparation, and the element of surprise. Captain Song Yu-jin watched the battle unfold from the bridge of her battleship Indomitable. Like everything else in the Sol defense grid, her ship was not what it appeared to be. For months, it had been disguised as a large cargo vessel making routine runs between Earth and the outer colonies. The Valerians had tracked it dozens of times and dismissed it as harmless civilian traffic. Now the false hull panels were falling away to reveal torpedo tubes, particle beam arrays, and armor plating that could shrug off anything in the alien arsenal. The Indomitable was actually larger than most Valerian cruisers, but its sleek design and advanced materials made it appear much smaller on enemy sensors. "Take us in, Helm," Song ordered. "Target their command ship. Let's cut the head off this snake." The Indomitable accelerated past the struggling alien fleet, moving faster than anything its size should have been able to manage. Human engineering had focused on efficiency over intimidation. Every gram of mass served a purpose. Every system was optimized for maximum performance. The result was a ship that could run circles around the lumbering Valyrian dreadnoughts. Captain Lee Bora's stealth frigate Silent Storm was already deep behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence and picking off isolated targets. Her ship's advanced cloaking systems made it effectively invisible to Valyrian sensors. While their main fleet was busy dealing with the asteroid fortresses, Bora and her crew were hunting the support vessels that kept the invasion force supplied and coordinated. "Target acquired," reported her weapons officer. "Valyrian communications relay lightly defended. Take it out," Bora replied. Clean and quiet. A single torpedo launched from the Silent Storm, its warhead designed to completely vaporize the target. The Valyrian relay ship simply vanished in a brief flash of light, taking with it the coordination systems for an entire sector of the alien fleet. This was happening across the battle zone. Dozens of stealth ships were systematically eliminating the Valyrians' ability to communicate and coordinate their attacks. What had started as an organized invasion was rapidly becoming a confused mass of individual ships fighting separate battles. Admiral Krextar stared at his tactical display in growing horror. His fleet was supposed to be cutting through primitive defenses like a knife through soft tissue. Instead, they were being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. "Preliminary count shows 400 destroyed, 200 more heavily damaged," his tactical officer reported. "Admiral, these humans have turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Every asteroid, every station, every cargo ship is armed and hostile." Krextar's four eyes narrowed. This was impossible. His intelligence reports had clearly indicated a primitive species with basic space technology. How had they hidden such massive military preparations? How long had they been planning this? "All ships continue the advance," he ordered. "We still outnumber them 10-1. Push through to the inner system." But even as he gave the order, Krextar knew something fundamental had changed. This was no longer the easy conquest he had planned. The humans had been preparing for this moment, possibly for decades. They had watched his empire's approach and used that time to prepare the most sophisticated defense network he had ever encountered. Back on Luna Station, Dr. Park Jiwoo was tracking the battle through quantum sensor arrays that gave her a real-time view of the entire solar system. The first phase of Protocol Lazarus was exceeding all expectations. The asteroid belt fortifications had eliminated nearly a third of the Valyrian fleet and completely disrupted their formation. "Phase 2 is ready to initiate," she reported to Admiral Kim Tae-ho. "Mars orbital defense systems are standing by." Kim nodded grimly. The Valyrians thought the asteroid belt was the extent of humanity's defenses. They were about to learn that every planet, every moon, every major orbital body in the Sol system had been fortified and weaponized. Earth had spent 2 centuries preparing for this day, and they were ready to show the galaxy what happened when you threatened humanity's home. The surviving Valyrian ships pressed onward toward Mars, driven by their admiral's pride and their empire's reputation for never retreating. They had no idea that they were flying deeper into a trap that would make the asteroid belt look like a minor skirmish. Humanity was just getting started. The red planet Mars had always looked peaceful from a distance. The Valyrian fleet approached it, expecting to find mining colonies and research stations, perhaps a few defensive satellites. What they found instead was engineer Nam So-young's masterpiece of deception and destruction. For 5 years, Nam had been working on what appeared to be Mars's largest communication array. The massive dish structures were visible from across the solar system, and Valyrian intelligence had cataloged them as primitive radio telescopes used for deep space communications. The aliens had even intercepted some of the signals, confirming their assessment that humans were still using basic electromagnetic communications. They never suspected that the dishes were actually solar. Collectors capable of focusing the sun's energy into concentrated death beams, all Helios arrays. "Report full charge," Nam announced from her control center buried beneath the Martian surface. "We have enough stored energy to cut their entire fleet in half." Colonel Lim Jae-sung stood beside her, watching the tactical display as 8,000 surviving Valyrian ships approached Mars orbit. The aliens had learned caution from their encounter with the asteroid belt. They were advancing slowly, scanning for hidden weapons and maintaining tight defensive formations. It wouldn't help them. "Initiate firing sequence," Lim ordered. Show them what a star looks like up close. The Helios arrays turned toward the approaching fleet and unleashed the fury of concentrated solar energy. Beams of pure light, each one containing the power of a small nuclear weapon, reached across space at light speed to touch the Valerian ships. There was no defense against light itself. Energy shields designed to deflect projectiles and absorb particle beams simply vaporized when faced with focused stellar radiation. The lead Valerian dreadnought, a ship that had conquered dozens of worlds, ceased to exist in the time it took for Admiral Krextar to blink. One moment it was there, the next it was an expanding cloud of superheated plasma drifting through space. Impossible, Krextar whispered as he watched his flagship's sister ship meet the same fate. They're using stellar engineering as a weapon. His tactical officer was frantically updating damage reports. Admiral, we've lost 16 capital ships in the first volley. The humans have weaponized their communication arrays. They're firing concentrated solar energy at us. Krextar felt something he had not experienced in 3 centuries of conquest. Fear. Not just concern for the battle, but genuine terror at what he was facing. These humans weren't just defending their world. They had turned their entire solar system into the largest weapon platform in galactic history. All ships evasive maneuvers, he commanded. Spread the fleet and advance at maximum speed. We have to get past those arrays before they can fire again. But the Helios arrays were just the beginning of Mars's defenses. As the Valerian fleet scattered to avoid the death beams, they flew directly into the second part of Nam So-young's trap. The cargo vessels that had been making routine supply runs to Mars for months suddenly dropped their disguises. Hull panels fell away to reveal massive missile batteries. Each ship contained thousands of antimatter warheads, enough destructive power to crack a moon in half. Pilot Han Wubin led his Ghost Squadron into the chaos, his fighters moving like nothing the Valerians had ever encountered. Human ships were built for speed and maneuverability rather than intimidation, while Valerian fighters were massive, heavily armored brutes. Ghost Squadron flew ships that were barely larger than atmospheric aircraft, but could dance between enemy fire like leaves in a hurricane. Target their command ships, Han transmitted to his pilots. Cut off their coordination and they'll fall apart. Ghost Squadron split into hunting pairs, each team assigned to eliminate specific high-value targets. The Valerian fleet was already reeling from the Helios array attack and the antimatter missile barrage. Now they found themselves under attack by fighters that appeared on sensors for split seconds before vanishing again, only to reappear behind their formations and eliminate their command vessels with surgical precision. Han's own fighter, Ghost 1, slipped through the enemy formation like a knife through silk. His target was a massive Valerian carrier that served as a mobile command center for an entire battle group. The ship was 10,000 times larger than his fighter, but size meant nothing when your enemy couldn't see you coming. Ghost 1 to all units, Han announced as his torpedoes found their mark, and the carrier began to break apart. Command ship eliminated. Moving to secondary targets. Across the battle zone, the story was the same. Human fighters were systematically hunting down every ship that looked important, every vessel that might be coordinating the alien advance. The Valerian fleet's command structure was collapsing as fast as their ships were being destroyed. Engineer Nam So-young watched the battle from her control center and felt a grim satisfaction. The Helios arrays fired again, their second volley eliminating another dozen alien capital ships. The antimatter missiles were finding their targets with devastating accuracy. Ghost Squadron was running wild through the enemy formation, destroying everything that moved. "Colonel," she reported to Lim Jae-sung, "enemy fleet strength is down to approximately 4,000 ships. They're trying to reform their lines, but Ghost Squadron is preventing any effective coordination." Lim nodded. "Prepare for Phase 3. Let them know that Mars was just the appetizer." The surviving Valerian ships pushed past Mars, leaving behind the wreckage of 4,000 of their comrades. Admiral Krextar's proud invasion fleet had been reduced to a third of its original strength, and they hadn't even reached the inner solar system yet. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from several battle groups. Morale is collapsing across the fleet." Krextar's mandibles clicked angrily. "No retreat! We are the Valerian Empire! We do not surrender to primitives." But even as he spoke, Krextar knew that these humans were far from primitive. They had been watching his empire's approach for months, maybe years. and had used that time to prepare the most sophisticated defense network in galactic history. Every assumption his intelligence services had made about humanity was wrong. The humans weren't a primitive species that had stumbled into space travel. They were master strategists who had been preparing for this exact scenario for decades. They had turned their weakness into strength, their apparent defenselessness into the ultimate trap. And the trap was still closing. Dr. Park Ji-woo monitored the battle from Luna Station, her quantum sensor arrays tracking every ship in the solar system. The Helios arrays had performed beyond expectations. The antimatter missiles had eliminated hundreds of targets. Ghost Squadron was wreaking havoc on enemy morale and coordination. But this was still only Phase 3 of Protocol Lazarus. The real surprise was waiting for the aliens at Earth itself. Admiral Kim, she reported, the Valerian fleet is approaching the Earth-Luna system. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Kim Tae-ho smiled coldly. Excellent. Signal Admiral Shin and Captain O. It's time to show our guests what home field advantage really means. The Valerians thought they had seen the worst of human defenses. They had no idea that Earth itself was about to reveal weapons that would make everything they had encountered so far look like children's toys. The final act was about to begin, and humanity was ready to deliver the performance of a lifetime. 4,000 Valerian warships limped toward Earth, their formation broken and their morale shattered. Admiral Krextar stood on his bridge surrounded by damage reports and casualty lists that read like a catalog of impossible defeats. 8,000 ships destroyed by a species his intelligence services had classified as primitive. But the humans weren't finished with their surprises. Earth's moon had always appeared to be exactly what it seemed, a barren rock covered in research stations and mining operations. The Valerians had observed it for months, through their long-range sensors, and seen nothing more threatening than scientific equipment and industrial machinery. Dr. Bae, Yunji had made sure of that. For 7 years, Bae had been working on what she called the Prometheus Protocol. Hidden beneath Luna's surface, she had built the largest mass driver in human history. The moon itself had been turned into a railgun capable of launching projectiles at relativistic speeds. Each shot carried the destructive power of a fusion bomb, and she had thousands of rounds ready to fire. Prometheus Control to Earth Command, she reported from her bunker deep beneath the lunar surface. All systems are operational. We have target lock on the incoming fleet. Admiral Shin Kyung-ho received the transmission at Earth's primary defense station. He was a veteran of humanity's early space conflicts and had spent his career preparing for this exact moment. Around him, the command center bustled with activity as operators coordinated the final phase of Protocol Lazarus. Dr. Bae, you are cleared to engage, Shin announced. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth's children. The lunar surface erupted in controlled violence. Massive electromagnetic launchers, disguised as mining equipment for years, hurled tungsten projectiles into space at speeds that approached 10% of light velocity. The rounds were invisible to Valerian sensors until the moment of impact, when they delivered kinetic energy equivalent to nuclear warheads. The lead Valerian dreadnought, already damaged from its encounters with the asteroid belt and Mars defenses, simply disintegrated when the first lunar round hit. The projectile passed completely through the ship and continued on to strike a cruiser behind it, destroying both vessels with a single shot. Direct hit on priority target, Dr. Bae reported calmly. Reloading for second volley. Admiral Krextar watched his flagship's escort vanish in a flash of vaporized metal and felt something die inside his chest. These humans had weaponized their moon. They had turned a celestial body into an artillery piece. What kind of species thought to do such things? All ships, emergency evasion, he commanded. Random patterns, maximum thrust. But evasion was nearly impossible when your enemy was firing projectiles that traveled at relativistic speeds. The Valerian ships were massive and built for intimidation rather than maneuverability. They wallowed through space like ancient sea vessels trying to dodge laser fire. The second lunar volley eliminated another dozen ships. The third took out an entire battle group that had been trying to maintain formation. The Valerians were being systematically destroyed by an enemy they couldn't even see. Captain Oh Dong-hyun watched the carnage from his command ship and felt a fierce pride in what humanity had accomplished. His home guard fleet consisted of ships that looked small and insignificant compared to the massive Valerian vessels, but appearances were deceiving. Human engineering had focused on efficiency and effectiveness rather than intimidation. All ships prepare for final engagement, O announced to his fleet. Use Luna for gravitational assists and hit them with everything we have. The Home Guard ships accelerated toward Earth's moon, using its gravitational field to slingshot themselves at velocities that should have been impossible for vessels their size. Human ships were built light and fast, with engines that could push them to significant fractions of light speed in short bursts. O's own ship, the Defiance, led the charge. It was barely a tenth the size of the Valyrian dreadnoughts, but it moved like a fighter craft and hit like a battleship. Advanced materials and exotic matter engines allowed it to perform maneuvers that would have torn apart conventional spacecraft. The Home Guard fleet struck the disorganized Valyrian formation like a school of metallic sharks attacking wounded whales. Human ships danced between enemy fire, using their superior speed and maneuverability to position themselves for devastating kinetic strikes. They didn't need heavy weapons when they could turn their entire ships into projectiles. Captain O targeted a Valyrian carrier that was trying to launch its remaining fighters. The Defiance accelerated to ramming speed and struck the alien ship amidships, its reinforced hull punching completely through the carrier's superstructure. The collision destroyed both ships, but O's crew had already evacuated to escape pods moments before impact. This was happening across the battle zone. Human ships were making suicide runs against alien vessels, their crews escaping at the last moment, while their unmanned ships completed their attacks. It was a tactic no other species had ever employed because it required a level of coordination and timing that seemed impossible. Home Guard actual to all units, came O's voice over the radio from his escape pod. Mission accomplished. The Defiance is down, but she took a carrier with her. Continue the attack. The Valyrian fleet was collapsing. Between the lunar bombardment and the Home Guard's kamikaze attacks, they had lost another 1,000 ships in less than an hour. The survivors were scattered across Earth's orbital space, their formations broken and their command structure in ruins. Admiral Krextar found himself commanding fewer than 3,000 ships from what had once been the largest invasion fleet in Valyrian history. His forces were demoralized, disorganized, and dying. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a weapon, and every planet, every moon, every asteroid was part of a coordinated defense network that had been decades in the making. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, "We're receiving surrender signals from multiple battle groups. Our forces are requesting permission to withdraw." Krextar looked at the tactical display showing the wreckage of his once mighty fleet scattered across the inner solar system. The humans had destroyed 9,000 warships without losing a single major vessel. Their defense network was beyond anything in recorded galactic history, but Valyrian pride would not allow retreat. Not from primitives, not when his empire had never known defeat. "All ships continue the assault," he ordered. "Reach Earth's surface and establish ground operations. We can still salvage this campaign." It was the last order Admiral Krextar would ever give. A lunar round, fired with perfect precision by Dr. Bayunji's artillery system, struck his flagship dead center and reduced it to expanding gas and debris. The Valyrian invasion of Earth was over. The few hundred surviving ships, leaderless and broken, began to withdraw from the solar system. They carried with them a message that would change the galaxy forever. Humanity was not to be underestimated. On Luna Station, Admiral Kim Tae-ho watched the alien retreat and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Protocol Lazarus had worked perfectly. The species that the galaxy had dismissed as primitive had just delivered the most decisive military victory in recorded history. "Signal all stations," he announced. "Stand down from combat alert. Earth is secure." But even as he spoke, Kim knew that this was not the end. It was the beginning. The galaxy would learn about humanity's victory, and other species would come to test Earth's defenses. Humanity would need to be ready for them too. The age of Earth's isolation was over. The age of humanity's expansion was about to begin. 317 Valyrian ships limped away from the Sol system, carrying with them the most devastating defeat in galactic history. The courier vessel Last Hope was the fastest ship in the broken fleet, and its captain had been given a mission that would reshape the understanding of an entire galaxy. The ship's communications array transmitted continuously as it fled, sending detailed reports of humanity's impossible victory back to the Valyrian Empire. 12,000 ships had entered the Sol system confident of easy conquest. Fewer than 300 had survived to tell the tale of what they had encountered. In the capital city of Valeria Prime, Emperor Zexthul received the transmission with disbelief that gradually turned to horror. His military advisors gathered around the holographic display showing the battle footage, their faces reflecting the same shock that was spreading through their empire's leadership. "This cannot be accurate," the Emperor declared, his forearms gesturing at the tactical readouts. The humans were classified as a primitive species, basic space travel, simple energy weapons, no significant military infrastructure. High Admiral Yexkan, veteran of 100 successful conquests, reviewed the data with professional attention to detail. What he saw violated everything he understood about warfare and technology. "Your Excellence," he said carefully, "the reports appear to be genuine. The humans had converted their entire star system into a coordinated weapons platform. Every asteroid, every planetary body, every apparent civilian installation was actually part of an integrated defense network." The Emperor's skin flushed purple with rage. "How is such deception possible? Our intelligence networks are the finest in the galaxy." "They saw exactly what the humans wanted them to see," Yexkan replied. "For months, possibly years, humanity allowed us to observe their activities while hiding the true nature of their preparations. They turned our own intelligence gathering against us." The transmission from The Last Hope included detailed analysis of human technology and tactics. The Valerian military leadership studied the reports with growing amazement and fear. The humans had not simply defended their world. They had turned the very act of invasion into a trap that consumed entire fleets. On Earth, President Ryu Seung-won stood before the assembled representatives of the United Earth government. The victory celebration had been brief. Now came the harder task of deciding what humanity's response to the galaxy would be. "The Valerian Empire will not forget this defeat," she announced to the packed assembly hall. "Other species will hear about what happened here and draw their own conclusions. Some will want to test our defenses, others will seek alliance. We must be prepared for both." Admiral Kim Tae-ho, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Solar Defense, provided the military assessment. "Our defense network performed beyond all expectations, but we cannot assume that future threats will make the same mistakes as the Valerians. Other species may develop counters to our tactics." Dr. Park Ji-woo had already begun expanding the quantum sensor network beyond the solar system. Her arrays now reached deep into interstellar space, monitoring for any sign of approaching threats. The days when Earth could be surprised by an invasion fleet were over. "We're detecting increased communications traffic throughout this sector of the galaxy," she reported. "News of the Valerian defeat is spreading. Multiple species are adjusting their military doctrines and intelligence-gathering procedures." The galaxy was learning that humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had suspected. But Earth's leaders knew that their greatest weapon was not their technology or their tactics. It was the galaxy's tendency to underestimate them. Captain Lee Bo-ra received new orders that would take her far beyond the solar system. Her stealth ship Silent Storm was being equipped for an extended deep space reconnaissance mission. Humanity needed to know what other threats might be gathering in the darkness between stars. "Your mission is to observe and report," Admiral Kim explained during her briefing. "Do not engage unless directly threatened. We need intelligence on potential enemies and potential allies." Bo-ra nodded. The Silent Storm and ships like it would become humanity's eyes and ears throughout the galaxy. They would watch civilizations that had never heard of Earth and assess whether they posed threats or opportunities. But first, there was a message to send. President Ryu stood before a camera that would broadcast her words across the galaxy through channels that every spacefaring civilization monitored. She had spent days crafting a statement that would establish humanity's position in galactic affairs. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice calm, but carrying undertones of absolute confidence. "I am President Ryu Seung-won of the United Earth Government. You have recently witnessed the defeat of the Valerian Empire's invasion fleet in our solar system. I want to be very clear about what this means. Humanity did not seek this war. We were content to develop our civilization in peace, exploring our system and preparing for eventual contact with galactic civilization. The Valerians chose to attack us. They assumed we were defenseless. They learned otherwise. Let me be perfectly clear about Earth's position. We are not conquerors. We do not seek to expand our territory or impose our will on other species, but we will defend ourselves with every means at our disposal. And as you have seen, those means are considerable. The Sol system is not just our home, it is our fortress. We have spent 2 centuries preparing for the day when someone would try to take it from us. Every asteroid, every moon, every planet is part of a defense network that spans billions of kilometers. Anyone who approaches Earth with hostile intent will face the same fate as the Valerian fleet. However, we are not isolationists. Earth is prepared to engage in peaceful trade, cultural exchange, and diplomatic relations with any species that approaches us with respect and good intentions. We have much to offer the galaxy, and we hope to learn much in return. To those who would threaten us, reconsider. To those who would trade with us, welcome. To those who would test us, know that we have had centuries to prepare, and we are ready. The message spread across the galaxy faster than light, carried by quantum communications networks that connected every major civilization. Within hours, it was being analyzed by military strategists, political leaders, and intelligence services on thousands of worlds. Some species began immediate preparations for defensive wars, assuming that humanity would follow their victory with expansion and conquest. Others opened diplomatic channels, hoping to establish peaceful relations with this new power. A few began planning new attacks, convinced that the Valerian defeat was a fluke that could not be repeated. All of them were making the same mistake the Valerians had made. They were underestimating humanity's patience, preparation, and willingness to turn apparent weakness into devastating strength. Dr. Park Ji-woo's quantum sensors detected the increased military activity almost immediately. "We're seeing fleet movements throughout the local sector," she reported. "Multiple species are repositioning their forces. Let them come," Admiral Kim replied. "Earth will be ready." Captain Oh Dong-hyun, recovered from his escape pod and assigned to a new ship, was already preparing the next generation of Home Guard vessels. These would be even faster, even more maneuverable, and equipped with weapons that would make the Valerian defeat look like a minor skirmish. "The galaxy thinks they've seen what humanity can do," he told his engineering team. "Let's show them they haven't seen anything yet." In the depths of space, the wreckage of the Valerian fleet drifted as a monument to the dangers of underestimating Earth. 12,000 ships had approached the Sol system expecting easy conquest. Their scattered remains served as a warning to anyone else who might make the same mistake. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, not with words of friendship or threats of conquest, but with the simple demonstration that Earth would not be taken. The message was clear, written in twisted metal and cooling plasma across millions of cubic kilometers of space. Earth was ready. Earth was waiting. And Earth would never again be caught unprepared. The age of humanity's isolation was over. The age of respect had begun.